I love being in a band and I love the idea of being on a team. I'm not a sports guy, but when it comes to, getting everybody together and banding together to create something that you couldn't do on your own, like that's a really beautiful thing that you can do with music.
Loren Kranz is a musician with deep talents across multiple instruments. He plays in groups including Barbarossa Brothers, who will be performing at the Saginaw Art Museum on June 15th as part of the Museum Tunes concert series. Our conversation today includes Kranz's view on making music with others and the nature of inspiration. This podcast was recorded June 9th, 2021. I'm here with Loren Kranz today. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, man. Glad to be here.
Maybe by way of introduction, you can describe a little bit of what it is about music that you just absolutely love, that makes you play or write music. What's the drive behind that?
Ooh, coming out of the gate swinging.
That's right.
Music is music. It's just something that has just always been such a huge part of my life. It's given me, it's taken me to so many different places, brought so many incredible experiences into my life. Most of the, no, I'm not gonna say most of the people, but most of my favorite people in my life have been, somehow connected to music or brought in through music. So, it's just, I love the social element of it. I'm not necessarily, that's not necessarily the biggest thing for me, but I love being in a band and I love the idea of being on a team. I'm not a sports guy, but when it comes to, getting everybody together and banding together to create something that you couldn't do on your own, like that's a really beautiful thing that you can do with music.
Can you describe a little bit more about that, being part of a band? Are there instances where you've been sort of lone wolf, or have you always been playing with bands?
I don't like doing that. I've done it. It's not my comfort zone. And the reason is, well, kind of, I guess, what I was describing, just the idea of even playing music with one other person, and this thing becoming bigger than yourself, and you're bouncing ideas off of each other. You can focus on someone other than yourself, I guess. To play with somebody, I always think of it as my job is to make them sound good, or to support them, and hopefully they're reciprocating that. Hopefully they're on the other end trying to lift me up. I don't have that if it's just me. Like, who am I supporting? And I struggle with that. I've done it, but I like playing with people.
Yeah, that idea of collaboration and what you're good at is different than what somebody else is good at, and then maybe a melding of those things comes together when you play together. Is that a lesson that you learned early on, or is it something that sort of grew through maybe the experience of trying to do it by yourself?
I think that was early on, because I started out similar path to many musicians. Just started out in grade school band class, 6th grade band, Freeland Elementary School, just playing with other people, and at that point it was like 100 kids trying to make noise, trying to make a sound. But even at that point, there were moments where it's like, oh, this is pretty cool to be on the team. I definitely think that's been with me for a long time. I've been playing music now 2/3 of my life. So yeah, that's something that was hard over the past year, obviously, because we couldn't get together in a lot of instances. And I play with a number of different groups, and I just get a lot of enthusiasm, and I feel like that was really hard for me to not have that in my life, even for a couple months.
Yeah, it's incredible. Uh, Talking to artists of all types, some of the creative ways that people were able to compensate or work around the limitations of the pandemic. Can you explain maybe some of those things, some things that you did from a creative standpoint that maybe you might not have tried to do or wouldn't have thought about as sort of a
Absolutely.
silver
Yeah,
lining
it's been a
to the
year of
pandemic?
stretching. It's been a
Yeah,
year of pivots and stretches, and yeah, exactly what you said, trying to put myself in a situation that I would not have otherwise. And I mean, that's good. Specifically in those first couple months, March, April, May of 2020, learning how to record myself from home. I didn't even have an interface here at the house, a way to plug my instrument into my computer and record myself, which now you think, well, that's basic. That's 101 for any musician. You got to have that, but I was never worried about it. That wasn't a thing that I would need to do. I could always go somewhere to a studio or, maybe in a live setting and record myself, or maybe there's someone there, who has that capability. So there's that. There's the live stream element. I think we all got really familiar with the protocol and the mechanics of live streaming this year. And that was tougher for me just because I'm not a super techie person. And that's always a little bit of a challenge for me, but we found ways to make it work, and people who could help us, even from afar. So yeah, there's been a lot of that. Just putting myself in new situations, and I've grown
yeah,
from it.
yeah. Maybe could you just describe some of the creative process that you go through when you're making music, whether that's recording yourself or with others? Is there a particular way that you go about that, or mindset that you have when you approach making music?
Um, you know, it's really just it's really just kind of taking everything you've learned and just trying to put it out of your mind in some ways, just kind of not stressing too much over a lot of the details and kind of letting it flow. I mean, when it comes to like playing in a band, I try to be and try to keep it as natural as possible. And there's things that I rely upon, um, tools that I rely upon, to kind of work in a rehearsal situation or put myself in a gig situation. But yeah, creating music, I mean, it's something that's so simple, and yet something that's so simple, but it's really profound too in a lot of ways. I don't know, I'm rambling a little bit, but
Yeah,
man, it's just the best.
yeah, yeah. Um, the it's interesting to hear sort of the concept of trying to put things out of your mind and really sort of get into a place or a flow of um, working your craft
I think
so
you can
that
get
you
in
could
your own way
create
a lot.
something.
I
Yeah,
do that anyway.
yeah. Do you find that you have some strategies to get out of your way, get out of your own way, things that break through that block that you sometimes might come against?
I don't have any strategies exactly. Mostly, I lately, I like that you're bringing this up, because lately I've kind of been holding this quote in my head, and it's James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, put it out there a couple of weeks ago. And just this idea, it can be any craftsman or a technician or whatever, but the idea of, for the beginner, the most important thing is execution, just doing something, doing the thing, right? For the intermediate person, okay, intermediate player in my case, it's about strategy. How are you going to do it? What's your path? What's your method of doing it? For the expert, not calling myself an expert, but I've been doing this long enough. We'll say we're approaching that level. It's mindset. Okay, it's not skills even, or how are you going to do it or anything. It's just putting yourself in that right place. I don't have a method for it exactly, except just to kind of keep that at the forefront of my mind. Is just I want to keep this. I want to stay relaxed myself. I want to try and keep everybody else as relaxed as possible. So I want to put out as much positive energy as I can. If coming back to that idea of being in a band, just supporting one another and eye contact and sight lines and kind of keeping everybody lifted. And I've really been thinking about this a lot. Just the idea of mindset, and how often I've in a poor mindset, how many times that has tripped me up. And the idea that when I'm at my best, everything is flowing.
Yeah. Do you find that you draw inspiration from a particular source, or do you find that you're drawing inspiration from many sources? As a photographer, I know for myself, a lot of people think that I'm constantly looking at other photographers, and I do. I study other photographers, but I'm also drawing a lot of inspiration from the environment around me, the people around me, things like that. I'm wondering where you draw some of your inspiration from.
Yeah, good question. I'm definitely drawing inspiration from the other musicians, of course, but there's also a lot that I'm pulling from an audience. Very early on, this is something that just kind of came up for me, but really early on, I remember playing in school, and one of the first, I'm using air quotes here, gigs that we did was in the high school library. This was with our jazz band or whatever. And I'm playing drums, and people actually are getting up and dancing as we play. And that's something I'd never experienced before, but immediately there's just a visceral reaction of just, wow, that's so cool. They're dancing to my vibrations. I'm creating something that moved those people. Like, that's a lot of inspiration for me right there. And that I'm a drummer. I play keys with Barbarossa Brothers now, but whatever I'm playing, whatever I'm doing, if I'm making music, seeing people dance, even just seeing people move in their seats, tap their feet, a smile is a huge inspiration for me if I'm playing.
Yeah, almost from what you're describing, what I hear you saying is it almost creates something of a feedback loop when you have a response for the audience. Like
Totally.
As an audience member, we're watching the band, but as a member of the band, you're watching the audience. It's almost as though the audience is the performer from your perspective.
Right. Yeah. Good one. One of my favorite musicians is Lee Von Helm, the drummer for the band. And I was just reading a biography of his last week, and he always calls the drum throne, the drum seat, the best seat in the house, because you can see the show and the audience. And I love that, because it's I've experienced that. It's totally true. Just getting to see everybody and getting to see everybody move, and that moves you.
Yeah, that's an incredible thing. Now that we're in a place that where the world is starting to open up, as they say. How's that impacting the way that you're working and able to get out and play? And what has that sort of done for your music as you've been able to have a real audience to interact with?
Yeah, it's it's been really busy. I mean, the last month has just been crazy busy because it feels like what would usually be 6 months of booking work we're trying to fit in the last 4 weeks, you know. But as far as playing, yeah, versus pretty much a year of mostly live stream type stuff, or playing for cameras or recording situations, something along those lines. We're finally in front of an audience again, finally in front of maybe an audience that doesn't have to be in a pod. I'm generalizing a little bit because we all have kind of different situations that we're dealing with, but an audience, yeah, where they are giving a little bit more back because they feel like they can, because everybody's spirits are a little bit more lifted lately, and I mean, that is such a great loop because we just get higher and higher. I'm really excited about this show at the museum, because that's actually the first time we'll have played in public, well, for a public show anyway, in about 9 months, and we just did a gig. It was a party for a friend of ours in Bay City over Memorial Day weekend, just kind of like more of a get together, invite only type situation. And that felt so good, just thinking back on it now, it's like, oh yeah, it felt like old times a little bit. And yeah, I'm looking forward to more and more of that. It's all about the outdoor gigs this summer. There's nothing like playing outdoors. Yeah, just playing in the sunshine or on a nice summer evening is just, it's hard to get better than that.
Yeah. Well, Loren, thanks for taking the time to chat a little bit more about your story and the music that you're making.
Absolutely.
We are certainly looking forward to having you at the museum and being able to interact with you and have you interact with us. It's going to be a great night, and certainly all the best as you continue your musical adventures and keep making music.
Thanks so much, man. It's going to be a great summer. I just have to say kudos on the great series that you guys have put together this summer with Jordan Hamilton. I saw was going to play, and Monique Ella Rose. It's a really solid series of great music, and myself and Barbarossa Brothers are really honored to be part of it, honestly.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for listening to the Saginaw Art Museum podcast. You can stay connected with the museum through our website and social media channels. We invite you to become a subscriber of this podcast or become a monthly contributor to the show to help us carry out our mission of providing art for all.